Hello and welcome to Access Harleywood. Today will be the acting edition, and this is actually one of those little pet peeves of mine. Depending on who you are, some people say I'm an acting snob, and I don't think I'm an acting snob. I do take it very, very serious, and I care a lot about people being properly trained. And I always used to say this when I was playing any of my sports. I was competing on the national team in judo. I didn't meet somebody on any world stage that said I'm a natural and competed for their country. Never did.
Right.
They were always trained by professionals.
Got to work hard.
I competed in taekwondo. Never met somebody who was a natural that wasn't trained. They had strength and conditioning coach. They have all kinds of things, and that's how they kind of got, to be the best in their country and to rep it. And for some reason in acting, I keep running into people who are naturals, and I understand what they're saying. They're saying, I am naturally able to get into characters and to deliver things, and I go order food at the drive-thru in a different accent, and nobody calls me out. I get it. Yeah. Like, you have a natural talent that still has to be honed. If you're Michael Jordan, you had all kinds of coaches to get you to where you are, and without them, that natural talent wouldn't do all that much.
Yeah, I think some people mix not being shy or not having a fear of being silly or being in front of people as being a natural at acting, and it's two completely different things.
It absolutely is.
And that's, I think you just used the best analogy, that as good as Michael Jordan was, he still showed up every day for practice. As good as Tom Brady
and had
practicing.
A slew of coaches.
Right.
Slew of coaches.
You can always be better.
Yes, absolutely. And the thing is, if you are your own coach, you set the limit by that immediately.
Right.
Because you're it's like when you're a fighter, they say you can't be the best guy in the gym. And these things are true. But let's tackle this right out of the gate. Yes. I want to bring in Jerry Hayes, who I co-directed a film with, who's been in a slew of my films already. And he's somebody I really respect when it comes to the craft of acting, who understands how this works. So here he is, Jerry Hayes.
Jerry Hayes. Welcome.
Yeah, welcome. Good to see you. We did the quick intro. I kind of said the whole thing about a fair amount of people. I've never, when I was fighting, nobody came and said, well, I'm a natural, and stepped in the cage and fought professional fighters. For some reason, you keep running into all these people who believe that they can deliver truth on screen without training, and today is a little bit for them, but mostly it's for the actors that might not really know how to grow and how to take the next steps to be truthful and everything else. So if you could share a little bit with me your beginnings. I know you were in a theater boy to start, so let's hear it.
Yeah. Well, my beginnings were, I had an improv class when I was 12. And I grew up on movies. I loved old movies a lot. And I had this improv class, and my mother used to have me do scenes from movies for the neighbors. So I would act out these scenes from On the Waterfront, Inherit the Wind. Dog Day Afternoon was out that year, I remember, and I snuck in and saw this. And I really fell in love with this acting thing, the imagination and these circumstances. And I was ready to read a script now, and I was skipping school, actually, to go to the library. And I found an old book on an old actor named Paul Muni, because I had heard this was a brilliant actor in the old days, in the 30s and 40s, from the Yiddish theater. So I'm reading about craft.
Yeah.
And that he actually had a process. Like, he was describing creating a role, like baking a cake, putting in certain ingredients.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you bake the cake for a certain amount of time and it comes out right. I was mesmerized that they even had a craft or a process.
Yeah.
I had no clue. I thought you should get up and do it, But I said, oh. And then when he explained that it doesn't take away from your natural ability, it allows it to be expressed more often than not. Huh. And then I got into Stanislavski, and I started training. But I was doing plays, and then back then we had electives. Yeah. So I had a brilliant teacher, very young, who was a wonderful, give you freedom and explore improv, breaking down scenes. And then an actress just found me from the theater and put me under her wings and mentored me, and she started to be my weekend mentor, coaching me.
You know what they say, when the student's ready, the teacher will appear.
I was ready. My mother found me at the library, man. Because I had skipped and I felt somebody staring at me. And I said, who's staring at me? And I turned around, it was my mother. She says, Jerry, little boys do not skip school to read about acting. They play hooky. That's what I swear to God, that's what she told me. So
she had different worries.
Yeah, she's like, no child of mine is going to be an artist. All right, you go be a president, a lawyer. That was my beginning, and then I did play after play after play. I read hundreds of books, but I made myself a promise to apply whatever I learned to see if. Back then, I didn't know the word instrument, but I was basically trying to find out what worked for my instrument to produce this believable, truthful acting I was seeing in the movies. And I think the epiphany I had was in the middle of a scene. I was 12. It was in the middle of a scene. I was 14. And I had heard so many actors talk about, you got to love the process. That's what will fulfill you, is the process. And, like most young actors, you're getting attention and you're doing well. But there was something more I was hungry for. And the moment I actually heard somebody in a scene and actually saw his eyes and felt the soul of that person connecting life, I started to feel, I knew the difference right there. Because as soon as I stopped trying to please the audience, they become engrossed with you.
Yeah.
So I went back to read the Stanislavski book. Back then it was Actor Prepares, was very popular.
Yep, still popular.
Still
popular.
But to understand, you got to be ready. To really understand what he's talking about and what applies to our culture. And I fell in love with the craft, the art, and I made myself a promise that day that I would respect this thing, respect the art. I would respect the audience that's to sit through me, whether it's 5 minutes or an hour back in those days, and myself. And that I knew that this would allow me to express even more by training too and applying, because knowledge is power, but it's useless if you don't know how to apply it. So there's plenty of I didn't want to be a historian of just I didn't want to be a theorist. I'm an actor. I want to be able to do what I'm talking about, and I'm true to my instrument. So some things that may work for me may not work for that actor, and vice versa.
Yeah, I want to actually kind of get into that, because one of my favorite things about talking acting with you, which you and I are ridiculous.
We talk, we talk acting movies
all the time. But what I really, really like and respect is that so many people I have met are really, they pick one, and that's God, and
technique.
Everything else is off.
Like a genre, or
no, essentially they pick an acting coach and their method, and then they follow that to the grave.
Yeah,
and I've always been like, I think you got to kind of
just
pick and choose what works for you. And we've talked about this. I'm not a huge fan of emotional recall in certain situations. I don't want to substitute the person I'm across from with, my dying brother, and to be sad, because it won't be genuine to the situation. So for me, I have to make it true. But there will be times that you just got to find a way, because the scene might start with you crying.
Right.
So if your scene starts with you crying, you may have to do something to substitute before you go into the scene, so that you can start in a place of being having a different motivation to start before it turns into where you are now.
I think I can articulate.
Yes.
It's this, the great divide.
Yes.
I'm not going to go through acting history, because, there are actors that say the character does this and it works for them because that's how they work. And there's me that say I am the role, and that's how I start right there. But there's differentiations. But the great divide between Stella Adler and Lee Strasberg was her disagreement in the middle of a scene to substitute something from your life. She felt it was just counterproductive for her.
In the middle of a scene.
Yeah, I'm working up 30 seconds before, and I grabbed something that had worked for me, that I worked on, my emotional prep.
Okay.
Let me explain. So
Yeah,
I think it's I think it's easier. We all have an emotional memory. We have triggers. And I was thinking about this before I came in today. My girlfriend sent me a poem about that reminded me of my mother. And I started to tear up today, actually. It was, But earlier I had told her a story. We'd talk about our past, you know, and the abuse that went on when I was younger to my mother. And it didn't touch me because it's so old, you know, and I kind of, you know. And then she sent me a poem to remind me. It said, "The Proud Mama." My mother never got to live to see me do all these movies. And she was the person, as much as she didn't want me to be the artist, she was number one at the front row.
Right.
She was the one helping with the
cameraman.
She was the cameraman of my first shorts.
That's awesome.
She was the best cameraman of them all. They all sucked. She had an eye. She knew.
Yeah.
And she believed I had it to act, even though she didn't want me to. She couldn't lie to me and say you couldn't act, you know. And but I read that poem, and it struck my senses and my emotional memory.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden I started to well up, because it reminded me, my senses and the memory reminded me of my mother, certain words. You see, the next thing I did today by accident, I didn't even realize. I was walking through CVS, and I saw some Christmas paper, wrapping paper. And there were 2 rows of paper that reminded me of when I was 10. And I saw the color, the exact design, and I started to remember us wrapping those, and I started to smile. Now, this is an emotional recall.
Yeah.
We all have this.
Yep.
The debate is, in the middle of a scene, as it's an emotional moment coming up, what's wrong with me substituting something else? Okay, it's Lee Strasberg. And Boleslavsky, who's taught this. And Stanislavski was one that gave it up later, but went through. It was his laboratory. He was trying new things. And for many people, it works. Most people, probably not. In the middle of a scene, you're remembering a trigger that worked for you. You were doing your prep on this scene. And you find through your senses, it could have been the dog's hair. It could have been a smell. It could have been something that struck your chord when you were prepping this. And now, as you're building up in the middle of a scene, not the prep, not the emotional prep before a scene starts. That's different. Or it's not. Just depends. As you see, this gets sticky. Yeah. For my instrument, for me to think about my personal life or something that senses and separate Harley, who's playing my father.
When you're trying to connect.
I'm trying to connect to you. Now, the argument will be, well, we're always substituting things that aren't there. That's true. But this feels counterproductive to my personal instrument. The other way feels better. Even Harley not being there, me using my imagination, strikes me. It just works for me. Some people can do the other way. And this is, they call affective memory, emotional recall. But what the divide was more in the middle of a scene.
Right.
When you're doing the training, the actor's saying, I don't want to train like this. I can't train like this. Yes, you can, or you're not an actor. Yep. Well, that's silly. Even Dustin Hoffman has said, Lee Strasberg say, well, that's a last-ditch tool. But he believed in it because we are our own instrument, where I don't. To evoke emotion, I go to the cause. I go to the given circumstances. I go to the other actor or my imagination. If they
most of the things that we play, we can imagine.
I imagine.
And fully submerge ourselves in.
I do, you know, and I think most people probably work this way, but there are people who use that.
Katie loves attaching stuff to music, then playing music.
That's transference.
In her prep. Yes,
that's prep. Now, emotional prep it's a bit different because transference means I thought of what I told you today. It stirred the essence of that thing. I let it go. I come and I connect to Harley. It just stirred the mood of this.
And you already have that in you.
I have that essence that because it's always inherent in me. I don't have to walk around all day and play Bronson from Getting Out.
Yeah. A lot of people think method acting is this Jared Leto thing where you're running around like being the lunatic all day.
Yeah, if that's what he needs, I don't need that. I maybe
but
need
I'm saying
half hour.
But I'm saying method acting isn't necessarily only that.
No, not at all. No,
and doesn't really mean that you have to be that way at all.
No, and I wouldn't.
And there are lots of methods.
Hey man, the method is whatever works for you. And that's how I was brought up, that the method is whatever works for you to be able to live truthfully in these imaginary given circumstances and to be able to respond to imaginary stimuli as if it's real. Yeah. Go ahead.
Sanford Meisner right there.
True.
I was going to say, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I looking at acting and talking about different coaches and finding your niche.
Yeah.
I've always looked at acting as kind of like a fitness regime.
Mm-hmm.
Every diet works different for every person. We're all different people. And I would say if you're wanting to get into acting and you don't like a style or a method, there's so many different learning paths to continue searching and find what works for you.
And why reject everything? Because I'll tell you what, as much as I don't do in the middle of a scene, mid-scene emotional recall, I'm really not a conscious, we all do emotional recall, a conscious emotional recall. Mm-hmm. I'm always going to the cause and the source by living truthfully and connecting in these circumstances and allowing it to hit me. I'm always preparing, and then I let go and I get in there and I connect and go through it and live it. I've always been like, I just throw it away and I live it, man.
Yeah.
That's why I came
back.
You
got to throw the prep has to be thrown out when you walk in.
You got to have your instincts there, like life.
If you're thinking about lines when you're in front of your scene partner, you're in trouble.
So in general, do I have a framework, a method that works for me in general? Yeah, it's pretty in general. In particular, in my prep, it depends on the role. When I'm acting, I'm connecting, listening, going through it, adapting to the circumstances moment to moment.
It's just like if you think about a sport, you're not thinking when you're in the boxing ring. You're reacting, adapting, moving. Like it's the same thing with acting. The prep goes.
But this is the sense of ease. We used to be, because when I think of my first, those early teachers were more scene study, improv, a lot of breaking down,
which is very important.
I don't
crucial
any of my training. I had a teacher from Tisch, who she was studying with Mike Nichols and Viola Spolin, who was the mother of improv. Her son Paul Stills. They opened a workshop, and George Morrison. So her influences were people who had studied with Strasberg too, and those were my teachers. But I didn't use some of that stuff, like relaxation in an uncomfortable chair to get comfortable. I found that the best concentrators were the better actors, but some people feel good about doing their relaxation and finding the tension and releasing it. So I don't downplay them neither, because that's what works for them. I just find myself, I get more of a sense of ease and a freedom of myself and effortlessness when I'm able to connect and focus. So that's where my instrument personally, I won't put down. I met Mira Rostanova. Mira was a very famous teacher, never wrote a book. And she was Montgomery Clift's best friend and his personal coach.
Okay.
I found her in New York. I went to the Museum of Modern Arts. And Mira was old lady by then. I was asking her all these questions about this teacher, that teacher, this teacher.
I could totally see that.
And I was that curious young man who was and Mira Rostanova, one of my favorite, Montgomery Clift in the 50s and Brando were just brilliant. And but I knew she knew him, and I knew she was on all those movies, I Confess, From Here to Eternity. So we were talking, and she says, Jerry, first, I don't want to put down any of those other teachers' ways, because they have their students, and it worked for them.
Yeah.
And she goes, but I'm an old lady now. You came to find me. What can I give you if I died tomorrow? It would help you and enrich you. That's what I'd like to know right now. She's an old Russian woman. And I said, you knew Montgomery Clift. What made him great? I was young. I didn't know. That was my question. What made him great? She goes, I know that. He was born with a lot of raw talent, and he worked harder on his craft than anybody I ever met.
Yeah. We just talked about Michael Jordan. First in the gym, last one out. You know what I mean? That's the guy with the most talent who's probably played basketball. You can argue now with some of the other ones, but I'd still say right now he's probably still the king.
Yes.
And he worked harder than all of them.
But the working hard is in your preparation. Now you got to let it go. And then you got to get in there and just trust your instincts. Yeah, you have to, because you can't look like an actor acting, or you're doing it wrong. You know? I mean, if you look like if you look and sound like you're acting, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah,
I mean, I think, and this is the thing I think it's not taught much, is that anybody that's a good actor, you have a similar goal, I hope, or one that hopes to become a good actor. That you don't want to seem like you're acting. You want to be the role. And whether you want to say the character does this, does that, or you want to start off saying I am, which is where I work from, I am. That's just my place. And I tend to want to be more, I feel more free revealing the role. Some people feel like it's more freeing to hide behind this mask thing. There's people that work that way psychologically. It depends, whatever you dig, it's yours. For me, go ahead.
You read on like Heath Ledger that was one of the big things of doing the Joker, where it was very uncomfortable for him to be in front of people and being that eccentric of a character. I remember there was a quick story of on the Dark Knight Returns when he is trying to find Harvey Dent.
Yeah.
And he comes into Bruce Wayne's party. They didn't tell him how many people were going to be in the room, and they said like he had a panic attack because when the doors opened, that was the first time he saw the group of people.
Oh.
And they pulled his coaching, his acting coach had to pull him aside and say, "These people are your toys. Like they're not, don't let the room fool you. You own this room." And all of that, where he's grabbing the glasses, like he said, he just let loose. And when he's walking that room and owning it, But you're right. Like they said throughout the whole process, he felt more comfortable hiding behind the
Some
character.
people psychologically, I find it more. It's more cathartic where I shelf what's not needed and let you just pluck out of me whatever you need. I just feel it's like a sacrifice of some sort where whatever you need, just take it out of me and shelf what you don't. And this should equal the role. That's just the way. But in the end, we're all trying to get to living truthfully in these imaginaries given circumstances. I mean, as much as it sounds cliche, it is where you're going, and you're trying to find a moment of truth, because acting in film is acting in pieces. And you're just trying to find this one moment of truth that's so interesting and memorable and lifelike, and that's where you're going for, just to get this thing in there on film, and you get to live it. You get to go through it and live it and experience being this role in these circumstances. Go ahead.
I want to turn the table a little bit because of the fact that you are an actor who sometimes directs.
Sure.
I would like to kind of hear your thoughts on a little bit of maybe set etiquette and a little bit of maybe about how you feel. Because actors are sensitive beings. And you've been on sets where somebody tried to get it out of you with a hammer. So just give me some thoughts on how to communicate with an actor. I mean, it's not going to fit everyone anyways, but some thoughts on that, and maybe some newer actors, give them some ideas of some set etiquette when they, show up on sets. The first few times they might be at a less professional set and they could get really relaxed, and then they show up at a professional set and act that same way, and it don't work. So just give me some thoughts.
That's interesting you say that, because when you say that word professional, I think you should be professional if there's no budget. And professionalism starts with your attitude. And I think a respect for what you're doing, the craft, the art, a respect for your peers you're working with, a respect for the audience, a respect for yourself. And you should take it and treat it professionally. I don't care if there's no budget.
Well, I agree. Fundamentally, if you agree to a job, if it's $0 or $1 million, you should deliver. That's because
why are you there? If not? I mean, you're all there for a common goal.
But I've heard people who don't take it serious because there was no money attached, and it's like
it's wrong.
You don't get it. I've worked my way up a lot of ladders in the corporate world. You have to do the job before you get the job. I can I'll leave it with that.
Well, why I get. Again, when we talk techniques, when we talk all this is my opinion, and I'm entitled to my opinion. So I'm not trying to shove anything down anybody's throat, but I do believe in general, the better performances and the better acting and the better experience and the more joy you're going to get out of it is to start with respect and a professional attitude. It doesn't mean stuffy and too serious. It just means taking it that it's important. Art is important. And I think it starts with this. Imagine
a world.
Imagine a day. Take all your paintings off the wall. Take all your records. No such thing as records, CDs. No such thing as CDs. No such thing as TV. I just want to paint everybody's imagination. There's no such thing as TV. There's no music. There's no choice in your clothing. There's no choice in houses. They're boxes, huts. Your clothing is leaves. Everybody looks the same, cookie cutter. There's no art, no books, no paintings. Take that away. People who aren't artists don't feel expressed. So we're here to help them express themselves in some way. Put it all back and look at how alive our world becomes and our choices of songs, our choices of appreciation. They're us, artists. We're expressing by me living in a scene and going through it and living it. The audience is glued and watching you go through it. If you're
they get a part of it.
They're part of it. You're watching James Bond, but you're experiencing James Bond going through it.
Right.
But if he stops in the movie and is kind of posing and showing off and trying and starts acting and starts sounding like an actor, all of a sudden you're going, I'm going to pee, honey. And I'm going to you eat the popcorn. I'll be back. He comes back a half hour later because you haven't sucked them in. You haven't done your job.
Right.
Like Brando once said, man, I feel the same way, man. I don't want you to grab your freaking popcorn. I want you to be, what's he going to do next? I don't know what he's going to do. What's he going to do? Don't know.
Yeah.
I believe that. I do, because that's you going through it. And now they're, it's sharing. It's community. What's the word I'm looking for when it's It's both. It's a communion of sorts with the audience and you. Yeah. And you're caring for them by ignoring them.
It's like a rock concert.
Yes. The difference is Mick Jagger's connecting to the audience and singing the song. Mm-hmm. Where me, I got to twist and turn to my partner in order for you to pay attention to me, the audience. But if I don't connect to you and start listening to you and talking to you, and noticing you, if I start going,
yeah.
Right. Well, are you listening?
Yeah, well, they can't pay attention to that. It's not Saturday Night Live, Anyways, your original question, etiquette.
Yeah.
Can you read it? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just kind of want to get an idea of, I'm an actor. I show up on set first day. Mm-hmm. Let's say there was no table read, first time filmmaker, no rehearsals. I show up on set. I'm there a little bit early because I know how to be a professional. Okay. So start there. What should I do?
Here's where I'd say, if you never did a film or if you've done film, I would say this. Because in the theater, you get 3 rehearsals a week, man. Yep. So you've heard your partner talk, you've connected, you've blocked, you've done all this stuff for a month or two, probably 2 months in the theater. Now you come to film and you never did film, and you get what's called a table read. We're all sitting around the table. We're going to read.
Yep.
If you're lucky nowadays, it's really, I got to act
Should
like
get a few of them.
Yeah. If you're lucky, you get one, and I got to come in and act like you're my wife, and like I've known you for 20 years, and I've never heard your voice before. So how do we achieve that? You need the etiquette, as he's talking about. Okay, you grab your partner, go to the corner, and run some lines because you never heard him speak. The ones who say I'm good, 99% of the time, they aren't
not good.
They're not. They always think they know their lines. Yeah. It's hilarious because
the ones
I'm
that
good.
The ones that don't want to run lines, and you need to run lines.
And I always say, well, I'm not good. And I know my, but I go, I'm not good. And I said, don't give any emotion or whatever. And I know, because I don't want to intrude on their method. They might want to be instinctive when they call action. Mm-hmm. But I need to run those lines because I want to hear your voice. Mm-hmm. And here's the framework. It's old school. It's block it, light it, and shoot it. Block it, light it, and shoot it. Mm-hmm. So basically, this before block it, light it, and shoot it. Okay. So block it is considered in film. We act in pieces, so we rehearse in pieces. So we're going to block it, which is a mini rehearsal and blocking, where the camera director's following you around going, oh, yeah, right there. Put it, right there. Real looks real. Put the tape down. But we're running lines. So we're getting a little rehearsal. Again, after the rehearsal, when we were in another room, if the guy was, open enough to run some lines with you. And
hopefully he did.
Hopefully. On our we make sure people go do that and give people the courtesy of running some lines.
And if we see them not do it, we usually shoo them off to do it.
Yeah. You don't have to give all your emotion, but get in there and run lines, because, you're going to help, you can keep it. You're not going to lose anything in any repetition. No magic is going to be gone. This is such a myth.
Yeah, maybe if you go at full speed. But that's not necessary either.
I'm an actor. I should be able to reproduce this thing. Isn't that the one moment and I can't do it again?
Yeah.
Well, there's where you need to go to training.
Imagine if it was that with cars.
Yeah,
I can only make one car.
Yeah, go back and get some training. We are trying to capture the best of these takes, of course. That's what we're trying to capture. But surely I can reproduce this. Yeah. I mean, there's a framework, but every moment has its own worth. Yeah. So in between that framework of producing this, there's going to be wonderful, unique moments. And yes, you could have lost it in rehearsal. And that time at home when you were running with Harley was your best moment, but nobody had a camera on you.
Yeah.
I'm being real.
Happen. No, I get it.
You know what I mean? Like, I know that's true.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to worry about that. I'd rather get
So let's break this down. So first thing you do after you check in with the first AD and let them know that you're there.
Find my partner.
Yeah, find your partner. Run lines, and so that you're comfortable with them, and so that you can kind of get into it, and then probably walk around and mumble them to yourself for a little bit.
That's me.
Seriously.
And the more emotional the role, the less I want to talk to somebody, probably. And we talked about this.
Yeah, that's another good set etiquette. Don't talk to the actors when they're prepping. Don't talk to them.
Approach you.
Yeah, let them approach you if they feel like it. Yeah. There are some people that if you talk to them while they're prepping, they will be very unhappy with you.
They're instrument. They're very sensitive. But it depends on the scene for me. if I'm up next, I don't want to talk. I want to talk to my partner and the director.
Yeah.
But if somebody brought me, this is indie sets. See,
yeah.
Some sets aren't like this. They'll bring you in on time, and there's nobody really waiting for the scene down the road 4 hours.
Yeah.
Some indie sets are like that. You'll be there, and they didn't schedule properly, so your scene isn't next. So it's kind of a hard thing to judge.
And you're just sitting around.
Yeah, so that's where the hard judgment call comes in for people. It's hard to judge that. So I'm understanding, but this is what he's saying is true. I'm trying to focus on what's coming up and get my soul stirred. Basically, is the best way. I'm trying to stir my soul to be focused, because focus is everything.
Yeah.
To be able to be present fully in the scene you're in, it's everything.
Yeah.
I think it's your imagination is first, and then your ability to focus and concentrate, to be free of yourself, to be there, present, going through it and living it.
In the moment.
In the moment to moment, just like a basketball game, moment to moment. You don't know he's coming that way, go that way. He's coming that way, go that way.
Yep.
There's a framework. There's the lines. There's the hit your mark. Here's the lines. But there's intonations and nuances, moment to moment. And the director's hoping he captures that. And you trust him so much. You hope him and the cinematographer capture this, and the sound man, and everybody's important. Yeah. So I hope. Did I answer?
Yeah, no, I think you definitely did. We are completely up against this. This has been
oh man,
went so fast.
I was trying to get into this.
Well, we obviously going to talk more acting, but I would love if you have a summation, if you have a thing that you think somebody listen to me today. What do I want them to walk away with? An aspiring actor that maybe haven't really found their way.
Words
yet.
of wisdom.
Yeah,
my words of wisdom.
Your nugget of like here.
True wisdom is to be aware of one's lack of wisdom.
Yeah.
Love it.
Amen.
Yeah,
Denial is not just a river in Egypt.
And training will not take away. Don't be afraid, because you have to believe in yourself. You have to be confident. It's okay to fall down. You can't be perfect at every little moment. When your training is to fall down and succeed both. So when you get in there, you've bumped your head enough, and you just it's going to allow you to be. It's called the conscious to the subconscious. We're trying to create an atmosphere for inspiration to happen more often than not. And if all I was to do is rely on my natural talent, I'm telling you, there's some things I would have never done without training.
Yeah.
And it allowed my natural talent to be free. I hope that makes sense.
It does. I love it.
All right, thank you, Jerry. Thank you.
Bill Kenny is saying hello to you. He's watching the show live, so if you want to say hi back to him.
Coach.
There's for
Hi,
Bill.
I love you, Bill. I love all of you.
He's somebody who's grown a lot. Very good.
Talk about training.
Thank you.
That's
awesome.
Awesome.
They're enjoying the show right now. This is great advice, and people are really appreciating that.
I hope so.
Well,
I think we should have charged for this episode.
Right.
I think we.
I love. Where's the camera so I can tell them?
Right over here, right there.
I love you all. Thank you for watching. I love Harley, and nice to meet you.
It was nice to
You're
meet you.
great,
This is
too.
great.
All right, thank you, Jerry.
Bye.
Thank you so much for coming out.
Oh, that was really good.
I knew that this would make a big difference, because when people really get it and when they see what acting is all about, that man was just on fire.
Yes.
That's the passion
amazing.
about acting and how much he cares and everything else. And here's somebody else that I absolutely respect and love. She's fantastic. This is my wife, Susan Song. No, I mean, this is, you're in that chair.
You two know each other.
Yes.
No.
So we'll give her some applause. You want to and then come up? Aphrodite has worked with me on a bunch of films, and I've seen her. Actually, the first time I saw her was in Robert Butler's The Spirit of Isabel, and it blew my mind. It is still, to this day, probably the best short film I have ever seen. So anybody who hasn't seen that film, The Spirit of Isabel, and it made me seek out Rob, and it made me chase her.
That's not creepy. No,
but I'm saying as very, very talented and trained actress who I had the pleasure of working with and who I've learned a lot from. So I really wanted to share some words of wisdoms with with you, with all these aspiring actors, especially in Michigan, because it's a tough state.
Yeah.
We've when we had the incentives, they didn't hire us to act. They hired people to be extras. And when we didn't have the incentives, we were unfortunately a terrible state for film. So to find people who really do this to that degree of professionalism and talent is incredible. So I'm happy that you're in Michigan, even though sometimes you're probably not.
No, Michigan's always going to be my home.
You want to pull that mic a little closer? It's coffee talk. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah.
All
So, can you share a little bit your story? So,
how I started.
Yeah.
What got you involved in the acting?
Yeah. Well, yeah. You'd think it would be because my grandfather was an actor. He was a really well-known Macedonian actor. I watched him perform as a child, but I had no interest. I mean, I didn't even. It wasn't really on my radar at all, even though it was around me.
Yeah. What was that first thing that you chose to do? Because that's funny to me now.
Like, what do you mean?
What were you before you were an actor?
Oh, yeah. Well, I was a scientist.
Oh, wow,
Right,
okay.
right.
Yeah. I was going to be a doctor, and my father was a doctor. The son of the actor was a doctor. He was a psychiatrist, however, and was always had quite a flair for the drama. And I imagine that my dad would have been a great actor as well. But it just wasn't. I was a very studious child. I did my homework, did my math, did my science, and it was pretty much.
Yeah.
I never questioned it. I never really thought about any other options.
Yeah.
I was really into hair metal as a child.
Oh.
So I loved Motley Crue, and
Still do.
Yeah, still do.
I
And
think
I
they
was
just announced a tour. So
Yeah.
yeah, but it just wasn't. I loved art, and my father always exposed me to it, and made me read books and all that. And he was very into literature and film, but it wasn't. It was never a career, or even a.
So what turned you?
consideration.
What inspired you to change? Because that's a pretty
It
big
was
contrast.
and they weren't. My parents were not happy about it. It was
Yeah.
It
Be a
was
broke actor instead of a.
I'm a
you know
broke
what I mean?
actor. Yeah,
Aren't we all?
Aren't we all? Yeah. No. So I went to high school and then got into college. Went to U of M and was getting a degree in molecular bio and English. And then I, was like, should I go to med school? No, I'm going to go get my master's in toxicology. I did that, and then I got accepted to the PhD program in toxicology. So I was starting that. I was teaching
Typical beginnings of an actor.
typical beginnings of an actor, teaching chemistry. And I started to ask a friend of mine about acting. I don't know why. His name was Alex Frank. And he passed away maybe like a while ago, but he was the son of a news anchor. I think it was Channel 4 by the same name. And he was a really cool kid. We knew each other in high school, and he was getting involved in acting. And I said, Al, how do I do this? And he's like, I'll let you know when there's some auditions, and yeah, you should go.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, right. Okay.
Tell me when.
It's usually
Tell
how
me
it
when,
works.
yeah.
Show up at MPI and audition.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, MPI. That's where we all began.
Yeah. Right.
But that was about when, the first year of my PhD program was about when 8 Mile was starting to film.
Oh, okay.
And I was actually, and I had no acting skills, no nothing. And he goes, "Hey, Fro." That's what he called me, Fro. A lot of people call me Fro.
Yeah.
There's an audition for 8 Mile. You should go. It's an open call. No, Al, I don't think I'm ready for that. So I passed on it. And, a couple weeks later, I'm like, man, I should have gone. I started to look in the back of the Metro Times, and there were little acting audition ads in the back. And I found one for an indie film. I think it was called Junk. I don't think it ever got finished.
Like most of them.
Like most of them. But, I didn't know any better.
Yeah.
And I went to the audition and got cast as a junkie. And I had no experience whatsoever. It just kind of happened. It clicked. I said, "Oh my God, I gotta start doing more of this."
Mm-hmm.
So I filmed all my scenes and everything without any kind of background in acting, and went really well, felt really natural. And then I started to seek out training, and I trained with Rich Gotiri.
Yeah.
And he had a little place called the Michigan Actors Studio at one point, but now it's Rich Gotiri
Arts.
Gotiri Creative Arts. But he was my first actor.
They still
teacher.
do a really good job.
He's wonderful. Yeah.
They're I mean, it definitely is something that I can wholeheartedly plug. If you're in Michigan, that's a great place
that's
to
the
seek
guy.
out. Yeah.
Where is that located?
See Royal Oak or Ferndale?
He's in Ferndale.
Ferndale, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Right in the heart of Ferndale.
Yeah, they have a Facebook page. So Goteri, Goteri, Creative Arts.
And I believe it's right next door to the Emory.
And they do theater and film, which I really like.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a difference. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a difference, but I love when an actor can hold a scene all the way through if we have to.
I think that's one of the skills.
Because you and I talked about that.
Yeah, that being a theater actor, which is what I began, even though I did a bunch of indie films that didn't pay me anything. I just did it for free.
Yep.
And then I started to audition for theater and quickly went into the professional theater realm and became an equity stage actor, which is the equivalent of SAG for theater. Like the skill that theater teaches you is the ability to carry the scene all the way to the end.
Yep.
So
without
no
cuts.
stops. Yeah.
Yep. No cuts, resets.
No reset.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do you find it tricky from theater to film when you lose the reaction of the crowd? Because I hear that's always kind of the tricky process when you go from theater to film, that you don't get that immediate reaction from a crowd watching.
Yeah. Well, it's almost the same thing. It's just two different things. They're two different animals, but the same thing. So like with the stage, you have the stage, the actors, and then you have your audience. And the audience does create an energy that does.
They're a part.
They're a part of it, but they're never, it's not like you don't play to the audience ever.
No.
You feel the audience.
Right.
But you don't, I don't see them.
Their
usually.
energy is a part.
Yeah, the energy, and it does affect you, and you do notice the laughs, and you do have to pause and recognize certain things. But with film, on a film set, you've got a crew, and it's almost the same thing.
A little bit.
You've still got a tiny little, you've got your cast, which is like the stage, and then you're surrounded by like 50 people, and they're all kind of, even though their energy is to kind of guide your performance, to light you, to make you sound good.
Yeah.
They still have an energy too, I think.
Yeah, they do. I agree. I mean, I can say that we've been on sets together where I know you've shot the scene, you're all done, and somebody will walk up afterwards and be like, "Wow, that was amazing. I love that," and give you that feedback, which is that audience type of feedback.
Yeah.
And that's great.
Yeah.
Just don't do it in the middle of
don't
do it in the middle. That's I got to say that we were talking about set etiquette.
Yes.
Yes.
If we're shooting a scene and we're in the middle of this and you're the gaffer, don't walk up and say that was awesome.
Right.
Because
Let
you
it
don't
continue.
know if that was awesome. And the director may want something different, and now you've plugged it into their head that was awesome.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Not good.
Yeah, I personally don't like to hear from people.
Yeah, I mean,
While
most
I'm working.
actors, the director's voice should be the only voice that they hear. Most actors.
Yeah, because it honestly, like somebody says good job, I'm like, whatever, dude.
Yeah,
Still in the zone.
and not
I don't care.
offensive. Yeah, it's
It's not offensive. Just I don't.
It's no room for that
Going,
in my head at the moment.
Yeah,
Yes, I
yeah.
agree with that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't take that in.
No.
So how did you you started doing the indie films, you went in the theater. How do you was it mainly through classes as far as honing your craft? Was it something
She's
through,
had some amazing acting
through the
coaches.
process?
I'd love some, not necessarily name dropping, but
Kind of.
a
I don't
little
mind
bit.
name
I mean,
dropping these people.
yeah, I mean they're
Yeah.
amazing.
I mean, Rich, obviously. Rich
Yeah.
Gutierrez was number one. And he introduced me to the method, Strasberg method.
Yep.
And I'm not sure if you guys discussed this already, but it basically hones your senses. So you start by recreating a cup of coffee and all of the senses that come along with drinking a cup of coffee. You smell it, you feel it, you create an imaginary cup of coffee in your hands, even though you're not really holding one, but you are.
Okay.
And then you move on to like taste, like sweet and sour, and then it grows. It becomes, it turns into something like a private moment where you're doing something that you would be doing by yourself when no one is watching.
Kind of intimate.
But to do it around people.
Yeah.
So he took me through that. That, and then there's something called an affective memory, which is one of the ways that you can reach a heightened emotional state if necessary.
Yeah.
On camera, especially.
Yeah.
But also on stage. But anyways, yeah. So he took me. I took classes with him for maybe a year or two. And then I got pretty busy in theater, so I couldn't take as many classes. So I ended up working on stage a bunch. I moved out to the East Coast, and this is a silly story. I'm a huge Mickey Rourke fan.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, God, what did Mickey Rourke do? So I went online and I looked up his history and how he found his teacher and who it was. And he trained with someone called, her name is Seacat, last name.
Yeah.
And she was did the dream work, which is kind of an offshoot of Strasberg's method in a way. But one of her, the people that she trained was Elizabeth Kemp. And Elizabeth Kemp was my coach. I found her because I was into Mickey Rourke, and I reached out to the
so funny.
I reached out to the Actors Studio in New York, and I messaged them. I said, "Do you have anybody that teaches method, that coaches?" And they were like, "You want someone from New York? You want someone from LA?" I said, "I don't care. I'll go wherever. I just want a good coach."
Yeah.
And they, well, we'll send your info along to someone. They didn't tell me who, and she'll reach out to you if she's interested. And she, sure enough, I got a message back from Elizabeth, and she was like, "Tell me about yourself." Wow, we kind of bonded a bit.
Yeah.
And she said, come over.
Wow.
So I went to her apartment, and at the time I was screen testing for a movie out in LA, and I needed a coach for that. And she guided me through the whole script. But I mean, she taught Harvey Keitel. I mean, she's trained a lot of who are the people, like Bradley Cooper is one of her.
Yeah, when she passed and you were posting about it and looking at her page to see how many people were so touched by her and how many people were, honestly devastated with the loss.
It was sudden. Yeah.
Sudden. Well, I guess it was her little secret, right?
Yeah.
So, but she made she was incredibly impactful, and it felt, I felt from seeing and reading everything that she loved. She just took people in, took them under her wing, and just gave relentlessly.
Yeah, and it reminds me, this is an anecdote from class, one of the first classes I took with her. So she coached privately. And we would work intensively for hours. And then on Sundays, she would hold church. And she would teach a class kind of like they teach at the studio. It's a group class. Everybody's working on their sense memory exercises. And it was, 4 hours every Sunday at this church in New York. And I showed up for my first class, and she said, "Prepare a private moment for your character." I said, "Okay. I'll do that." And I prepared it and, created a moment for this character that I thought was appropriate. And, this is the difference. So in Rich's class, we did private moments, but we were all working simultaneously. And so nobody was watching you except for Rich. Everybody was doing their work. When I showed up for Elizabeth's class, I had that same idea in mind. I said, okay, I'm going to be working on my own on this private moment. And she walks up to me. She goes, "What are you doing?" I go, I'm going to do my private moment. She's like, you're not going to do it here. Get up on stage.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to do this in front of the class. And I go, I thought this was private.
Yeah.
She goes,
it is to you.
yeah. And she goes, that's the price. That's the price. And I will never forget that.
Wow.
That was what you have to put. That's the blood you have to leave on the floor.
Yeah.
You know? And it's true. And that was like a breakthrough moment for me.
Yeah.
To be able to be private in front of, and it was different than being on
Oh,
stage.
because
This was
peers.
this is what helped me on film.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is where you actually, you're not even acting. Like you're just doing something in private, but everybody's watching you. And she lets you go through the moment and then wherever it takes you.
Wow.
You know,
That's great.
And you never, you might have like an ABC for how that's going to go. Like, like say you're recreating a moment that your father passed away. And you'll say, okay, well, I'm going to start with the phone call. I'm receiving a phone call. There's a doctor or whoever telling me that my dad passed away. I react. That's the private moment, the reaction. But where that takes you, like the roller coaster that you go on after you get the phone call.
Sometimes you might be even more true in that moment than you were in the real moment because you're limited by a lot of things and you're trying to stuff it down.
Yeah.
And here now you have to live it.
You live it and you put the phone down and then maybe you just sit there.
Yeah.
And then maybe she'll say something like that will just kind of push you in another direction. But she was so good at that. Like she just kind of sent you on this little ride through that moment.
I wish more of those great acting coaches did a video of their sessions because I've watched now. I probably worn the DVD down, but I have Sanford Meisner's coaching in New York, and he is so. First of all, he's really rough on them. He's hard on them because he wants excellence, and pretty much it's shit or get off the pot. And you don't need to be here if you're just going to take up space. And I respect that because as a martial artist, I'm used to that.
I am too. I mean, I liked it.
Yeah.
I almost liked it.
Yeah, it's a weird thing because it also makes you.
It's like a coach.
Yeah, it's like, all right, I'm going to,
But she was tough and she was equally as loving.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You could cry and fall apart in her arms at the same time.
Yeah.
Right.
But she wanted you to become the best actress you ever could.
Yeah, I mean, she would hold these workshops up in Woodstock, New York, and it was an intensive, like 7-day workshop where you were working from morning to night on one character, and you become the character by the end of it.
Yeah.
And you could pick anybody you wanted to be, or it could be somebody that you were actually working on a script for. But if you wanted to, like, one year I played Janis Joplin.
Wow. Yeah.
And, it's. I'll share a story, a bad actor story for you. So Janis Joplin was an alcoholic. I mean, she drank a lot.
Yeah.
She loved her SoCo. And I, was drinking SoCo that week, all the time. And I showed up for one of the sessions having had some SoCo. And she figured it out. Like, she smelt it on my breath. And during, like, we would do this. It's hard to explain what we did in class or what we did in these workshops, but she smelled it. She just reamed me in front of the entire class.
Yeah.
And we were like going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then she was like,
Get out of here. That's the ugly side of taking the method a little too far.
Taking it too far, yeah. And you can't, and you have to figure
you
that
have to
out.
remain in control. That's a tricky place.
Yeah.
Very much so. And I still struggle.
And thank God for coaches.
Oh,
thank God
yeah.
for her.
Yeah. The coaches and directors have to save you half of the time.
Half the time.
Because you're drowning in your character while on set, and then you have to detach from it. I remember after we wrapped the original Bennett song, wrapping Bennett's song, and then we had to go back and shoot a scene. And we lived in this family. It was so real. It was all real. And then you go home and you have to somehow strip this off of you and then come back and do it again. So when we wrapped, it was so bittersweet because we do all these thrillers and everything else, and it's not quite as, getting out of your character. Yeah. This one was a place that I loved being. So like you have to strip that off of you. And then we find out that we had partial footage missing and we have to go back and shoot a scene. I had already killed Cole. You know what I mean? And here we had to go back again. And then they were like,
Cole,
well, we
Cole
found
was the dad.
Yes,
in the movie.
Yes. Thankfully, we did not have to run our lines again. They had all of our stuff.
We didn't really kill him.
Thank God. Yes. And we didn't really kill Cole. There's a sequel. And I'll be honest with you, that was tricky for me. I remember expressing that to you. You weren't as concerned as me at all.
About killing Cole?
Doing the sequel and being Susan and Cole again.
Yeah.
That was pretty interesting.
Because it felt really natural. Some characters you just fall into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to ask that because you guys have done some suspense movies. You've got the Bennett songs. Do you find some of those not necessarily easier, but where you, like you say, you fall more natural into and enjoy? Like, is there a certain genre or style like that you feel come more naturally?
Most comfortable in? I feel most comfortable in drama, I think. Like Rob's films, I'm pretty dramatic in, but Bennett's song also.
Yeah.
That was an interesting time for me because I just lost my father. I just moved back to Michigan, and I was doing a show at the Purple Rose.
Yeah.
And it was a comedy.
Yeah.
And it was
a wild comedy.
A wild comedy called Vino Veritas by David McGregor, who has a play running there now as well, a Sherlock Holmes play. It was awesome because I was laughing and I was, it was just like, it was not that there weren't low moments in the comedy, but it felt so good and natural and good to just like be open and laugh. And then we did Bennett's song and it was the same thing. Like we were just. And
then we went to Betrayed from that, where we were not best friends.
Then we killed them.
It was interesting when I, catching up on these films. I watched Bennett songs first and then get the Betrayed and watch you two not like each other.
Spitting on each other.
Yeah, actually, I gotta say the one scene in the surveillance room is still.
I love that scene.
Love that scene. It was so good.
I put it in my reel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I love it. It was so explosive with very little.
It was like, it was a very understated.
The subliminal.
We didn't really say that much.
No.
But it was.
Is that trickier when you have multiple roles like that in different films, like where you just went from husband and wife, and then to do another film where he's a villain? Does that make it tougher? Like, is it trickier to prepare?
And then to Agramon's Gate, which was
and
completely
that was a big
wild.
Yeah, it was a tough transition. You kidding me? Yeah. And the prep time in between wasn't very much. We didn't have as much time.
No, yeah, we were a couple months. We wrapped Bennett's song, and I think 2.5 months later we started shooting Betrayed.
Yeah, and I had to learn how to be a detective and shoot a gun and all these things that I had never touched in my life.
Yeah.
So, but at the end of the day, like, you put on all these extra things, but you're still a human being and you're still talking to somebody else.
The relational piece is still the same.
Yeah.
You just feel differently about people.
Right.
You feel differently, but you still carry on.
Still human. You're not a robot. You're not an alien.
No.
Yeah.
But you learn some other skills along the way.
I was gonna say, we're obviously still professional. Still, you're gonna think off that character. I'm just curious. Does it take a little more preparation now to say, you're not Cole? It's when you're on set now, and it's a whole different mentality. The preparation, I imagine, has to be a little bit extra.
It was. I put in a little more work for Betrayed, I think.
Yeah.
Because I did.
Most of that's in prep, though. When you hit set.
Yeah,
it's
set.
You're
right.
It's all there. Gone because it's not Susan. It's it's completely different. You know what I mean?
They say you forget. You do your homework, but you forget everything that you've learned once you get to set.
Yeah.
Because if you're thinking about that, then it's not real
not gonna
anymore.
Be true. Nope, not going to be true. That's great. So let's talk to the aspiring actors. So they just kind of decided that they wanted to be an actor. I have a friend of mine who used to be my fighter, and he started acting. He did a couple short films, same kind of thing. And then he messaged me like, he wants to audition for films, and this, and I'm like, cool, could definitely do that. I said, where are you training? And he goes, I stopped fighting. And I'm like, no. No. Where are you training your craft? Because for some reason you understood that you had to train to fight.
Yeah.
But so far he's a natural. So
far he's a natural.
So
like
what can you give advice for the people that are out there that want to be cast in bigger films that go places? Because I sometimes I don't think that they quite understand that there's stuff you have to do to be credible, to be able to be truthful for an extended, and when you're talking about multiple scenes and stuff like that, to be able to hold that truth and make an audience believe you, it's tricky. So what would you say?
What would I say? First figure out if you can do it.
Yes.
Because I do believe that there is a natural ability.
I agree.
Not everybody is made to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was lucky that I was able to do it, but I also could recognize if I wasn't. There's sometimes that I question that as well.
Mm-hmm.
But the times
I think that's healthy.
Yeah. But once you figure it out, if you have like a knack for it, if it's something that you enjoy doing, start. Look for a teacher first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But look for a good teacher.
Yes.
Because I've had a bad teacher too.
Yeah.
And I'm not naming that obviously.
Yeah.
They can steer you in a completely wrong direction.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to make sure that you talk to the acting folks that have been around the block and have had training.
Well, what you did, you admired Mickey Rourke, and then you went after his...
Yeah,
you know
that's
what I mean?
one way to do it.
But it absolutely
Who does that, man? Who does that, though?
I love that.
Yeah.
What would Mickey Rourke do?
What would Mickey Rourke do?
I'm going to get that on a bracelet.
Oh, man. Yeah.
So I like that.
And it turns out that
But
him and Elizabeth actually knew each other as children.
Oh, that's funny.
Isn't that weird?
I told you my Mickey Rourke experience in Miami, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He is awesome, and I hope he's slowed down. I mean...
I don't know.
Awesome
He's
cat.
still
man.
a rock
But
star.
yeah, I'm sure he is. He definitely is a rock star. That's for sure. So seek out a good coach.
A credible coach.
Credible, good coach. Somebody that's trained, somebody that you like on screen.
That you like, possibly that you like on screen, that teaches as well.
Yeah.
I know.
I'm saying that their student.
There's a lot of really good actors in Michigan.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of like hacks in Michigan as well.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be straight.
Yeah.
I love the Purple Rose.
Mm-hmm.
And they teach an acting class for beginners. That is wonderful. That would be a really lovely place to start.
Mm-hmm.
Rich Gotiri is a wonderful place to start if you're interested in doing method.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think his class starts on Monday, I believe.
Oh, wow. Well, then
I might be too
double
late,
plugging,
but maybe,
yeah.
You're welcome, Rich.
Got one here.
No, but so that would be my first. And then, I mean, you can seek out people outside of Michigan.
Yeah.
You can find coaches in New York.
Mm-hmm.
Elizabeth taught remotely. We actually trained together even when I lived in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And we would Skype.
Yeah, Sean Whalen, who was just in Three from Hell, and he was in Twister and People Under the Stairs. He does Skype acting, and he's really good. He is he's a little different on the coaching. He's a big fan of Sanford Meisner, as am I. But anybody who knows Sanford Meisner knows that that's a bit of a different touch on acting. Period. So just be prepared for that. Even though he does other techniques and stuff as well, he likes
Sanford Meisner.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many different schools too, and if you're interested in method, there's Meisner, there's Stella Adler, who taught Brando.
Yeah.
There's Strasberg.
Mm-hmm.
You can go many different directions within that.
Yeah.
And then, if you can attend maybe a workshop.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's the Chicago Actor Studio.
Toronto as
They had
well.
some good
Toronto has
stuff.
fantastic seminars.
Okay. Yeah. And sometimes they'll come up here. You know, sometimes they'll travel with their acting.
Unfortunately, not a lot.
Not
but
a lot here as much anymore.
Yeah.
But
Disney comes here, which is not Disney. But
Disney
that's
audition.
a whole nother. Yes, exactly. Wink, wink, nod, nod. I got the next level. I only have to pay $4,000 and fly to Orlando. All right.
Yeah. Good luck.
Good luck there.
Yeah.
Sounds like it's working out.
Yeah, you could use that on some training.
Yeah.
But then, so once you found your teacher, you can still audition.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be training to audition. And maybe you'll get some work. And I've learned...
A part of your instrument is working.
Yeah.
I was going to say, you stated earlier about starting in the independent films that weren't paid. I would think, if you're starting in acting and taking the classes, I would say was that a good experience? I would imagine it was still a good experience to get on set, to get in front of a camera.
Set experience is huge.
Absolutely. I mean, it taught me, everything teaches you something.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could see the learning curve from doing the indies that didn't pay me anything to the ones that did.
Yeah.
But whatever, you got in front of a camera.
Yeah.
And I realized even then, that I needed to work on my camera technique.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't figure that out until, I don't think I figured it out for 10 years how to do it properly.
Yeah.
And I still am figuring it out. But I was doing a lot of stage also. Get out there and audition.
Yeah.
Get a monologue together. Figure out how to do that on your own if you don't have a teacher, can't afford it, whatever. Figure it out. Go to some auditions. See if you can get cast. I learned so much on the job.
Yeah.
Right.
There were times when I couldn't, like I said, I couldn't train. And I had to work. I was on stage all the time. But I learned so much there.
Yeah.
And then get your union cards.
Yeah.
Get your SAG card. Get your equity card.
Tough in Michigan, but I'd still say after you pay your dues, it is the right decision to make.
I got them here.
Yeah.
I got them both here.
Oh yeah. I'm not saying. I'm saying it's less work in Michigan.
Oh, there isn't as much work. Yeah.
So that's what I mean. There's less, but I do think, if you become skilled at something and you have that equity, then you should be paid for it. Now,
well, you have to get paid once you're equity and once you're SAG, and then get an agent. If you're a model, whatever, if you're you want to be an actor,
even the I groups and Production Plus and all that jazz is still
they might
still
sign
good
you
stuff.
still.
Yeah,
you just have to have, I think, a monologue or something ready to show them.
Yep.
But once you have those things, then you kind of have to get on the train and start plugging away.
Yeah, and
read on your own. Train on your own. Like an actor prepare all the.
Yeah, we talked about it, but absolutely.
About that.
I mean, I still think that's every actor should probably own that, kind of, right?
Yeah, I was when I first started, I was so hungry.
Yeah.
For books.
Reading.
I read a lot of the Stella Adler books. She's got some beautiful training, and you can find it in the library, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And then I watched a lot of videos, Strasberg videos.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can find all that on your own. You listen to the Meisner, or you watch the Meisner DVD all the time.
Yep.
Those are all tools.
I read
Just get as many tools
Stanislavski
as you can.
to begin with, and all that jazz, where the origination kind of the method came. Yeah.
It's interesting. You brought up Bradley Cooper earlier, and how there's video footage of him at the Actors Studio show that I used to always watch, where they would sit down with an actor, and it's a good hour and a half, 2 hour show or interview, and Bradley Cooper is on multiple episodes where he was a student, just asking questions like crazy, and
hungry.
Exactly. As a young kid,
and you notice that too when you work with cast members. I mean, we went out and read for hours and hours, quite a few times before we even shot anything of the film. And as a director, I'm the same way. If you're in one of my films and you send me a message and say, hey, I want to meet and talk about the character, I'll meet with you. Yeah. I'll run lines with you. I like whatever. I like that. I love the craft to that. Yes. Yeah. So much that the whole thing of falling in love with the process is so true for me. I love all of it. So.
I know it. One thing that you just made me think of, the theater and film.
Mm-hmm.
In theater, you have a rehearsal process, right? and you prepare
rigorous
for
rehearsal
weeks.
process. Yes.
And then you go up, shows up, and that's that. It's running.
Mm-hmm.
In film, you prepare on your own,
Mm-hmm.
and then you show up on set. And I love film because it's almost like you're in rehearsal
Yeah.
for theater. You get to see all those like natural things that happen during theater rehearsals
Mm-hmm.
on film, and you captured it for eternity.
Yeah.
And that is the coolest thing about film, I think, is that
Mm-hmm.
that working on film is like rehearsing for theater for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you find a lot of really true moments too because of the lack of prep
or like the
between
spontaneity,
each other. Yes.
basically.
Yeah, I mean, you and I read lines. I don't think we ever put a whole lot of emotion into it. Anything.
No, we didn't.
We always
We're
just
like
read it.
Robots.
Yes, robot reading, just to get that feel and the bounce and everything, and that was
Memorize,
really cool. Yeah,
memorize lines.
Yeah, that we didn't even touch on that memorization and how important that is and how many different techniques there are of it.
Oh God!
But memorization is huge, and I think if you do it right, you'll probably hold and retain it pretty well.
Yeah.
I
Still
used to
working on
not.
it.
Yeah, I used to not be good. Jerry was actually the one who said the cover method, where you cover everything that you know, and you just keep sliding the paper. And I really dig it. And I started doing it. I'm like, man, I am retaining this better.
Yeah.
So I like it. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
But
I just rep them and rep them and rep them as many times as possible until it's natural.
Stick. Yeah.
And then. I mean, but it's hard. You know, like to get to that point where you've forgotten the words and you know them already.
Yeah.
Where your mouth opens and the words just come out.
Yeah, I mean, when you're at the right place as an actor, your lines is the only natural thing that can come out of your mouth when your partner says what they're supposed to say. It's so weird, and it may have a word off because it's so instinctive in the moment, but it's there.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah, the feeling at that moment where, yes, it's just becoming a natural. Now, do you guys feel that with the Bennett song, like getting back into those characters for the Bennett song? Was it just easily to fall back into that and get into
I had a very hard time. I kept wanting to go back to Cole, not realizing that Cole was with me all the time. And I was freaking out up until the day we were shooting. And I couldn't say anything that sounded and felt like Cole.
Yeah.
And then I get on set and we do the take and I'm like, that was Cole.
It's me again.
Yeah. Yeah. And he was just suddenly there because it was all in the prep. But it was very, very frustrating for me to get back. I was not sure of myself at all until we shot the first scene. And I'm like, wow, there he is.
Almost even better. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really, really weird.
But
I still believe that all that prep that I felt like I never needed, I probably needed.
Yes.
And that's probably why I landed there when we started rolling.
Right.
Got you there.
Yeah.
Like you
all
can
right, do you have a last nugget? We have
words of wisdom
gone over, but yeah.
We always do that.
We went over?
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah, we're terrible. I think today's episode is going to have a lot of people really digging it. I think it's great advice, and I think there's so many people out there that have natural talent, and if they only understood that the difference between the street baller and Michael Jordan is the training. If they get that, they
Take
can
it
now.
seriously.
Yes, exactly. So what do you think? What do you want to say?
Words of wisdom. Don't second guess yourself. I questioned, like, even though I knew I had talent in the beginning, I questioned whether or not I should go down the path for many, many, many years, and have only recently committed.
Yeah.
Just commit to it.
Wow.
Commit to it because it's, you know inside.
You're not whole without it.
Yeah, if you know you're supposed to be doing something, don't question it. Don't let anybody.
When are you going to get a real job and all that stuff? Just shake that off.
You get that every day, all day, and you just got to forget about that and just
ignore the noise.
Ignore it, and just trust your soul and go and do the work.
I agree, and I always tell people this. I mean, I worked for a couple pretty big corporations, and. You'd assume I'm happy. I had a really good paycheck. I worked in a field that I enjoyed, but I didn't love it, and it didn't call my soul. Now, I'm way more broke than I ever been.
Me too.
But my soul is on fire all the time. And I am so excited and passionate to be alive and to get to do this stuff that it's still way and all worth it. And I wish I would have done the same thing that you said. I wish I would have trusted what I felt a long time ago. Yeah.
But, there's always time.
Yeah.
You can't just start today, I guess. That's my nugget of wisdom. And, if you feel empty without it,
yeah. Yeah.
That's
a good rap. I don't even think we need to do a rap on this. I think that is the rap.
I think that's.
Are we gonna rap?
Yeah, right. Go for it. That's your next.
Well,
next
Darren now is sitting with the Hollywood.
All right. Well,
that's good.
I say we say thank you for tonight, and I hope everybody who watched and listened got some nuggets and some help from this whole thing, and I hope it sets you on fire.
Yeah, I felt like I was more of a viewer today, so I didn't really.
Yeah, I thought it would be fun for you actually, because I think most people don't understand the craft of acting, so they just don't get it. And after getting exposed, they're like, "Oh wow!" Yeah. I remember acting before I knew what acting was, and it was so weird because when I finally kind of I remember my coach in Sweden leaning in, looking me in the face saying, "Mean it!" And I was like,
Yeah.
because I said stuff and I didn't mean it. And I didn't realize that if I don't believe that I am who I say I am, and if I don't live as them, nobody watches me is going to believe me.
Nobody believes it.
Nobody's going to believe me.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I see that a ton on screen. Yeah. And it's just... It just kills the craft. So
just always look your partner in the eyes.
Connect.
Yes.
That's the one thing you can always rely on.
Yeah, yeah, and
everything else will follow.
Yes, I agree. With that, we will say good night. This is Access Harleywood, and we are out.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.